Welcome, everyone, to the Cybersecurity Podcast. It's the Cybersecurity Podcast with a little extra BS. I'm Andrew Nuxel.
And I'm Nathaniel Vick. And today we have Chris Frey back with us again to talk about kind of some things he's learned. And you've got a job now, Chris. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. I am currently a junior data analyst with a company called Indus, who is a government contractor. And I started on April 1st, which was a great day to start. And I am doing data analysis. I'm helping, I can't say like terribly much about it, but I'm helping some internal organizations kind of organize a lot of their finances and give some insights on things that they're doing for research projects and stuff like that. So it's been a really fun experience so far, definitely.
That's great. So what have you kind of learned from along the way of trying to get hired, I guess?
Yeah, so I think last time I talked to you guys, it was I was still kind of struggling a little bit to get myself out there, to get my resume out there, to get people to talk to and things like that. And I know that laying some of the groundwork with networking and things like that starts a long time ago. But a lot of it really kind of picked up traction after I'd talked to y'all. I had a couple events that I'd gone to that are in-person events and started talking to people that way. They had been harder to come by, but they're picking up a lot now.
Yeah.
And so I think that all the traction that I ever got when I was looking was from talking to people in person or, kind of on video chat. All the spamming of resumes got me literally absolutely nothing except sorry batch of emails. So I think that the biggest part for me, aside from starting to go to these in-person things, was just how I kind of presented myself to recruiters and to people who worked at different companies. And a lot of it in the beginning was, hey, what kind of openings do you have? What kind of jobs do you have? Like, I'm looking for one, which isn't really something that's, positive sounding, right? And I eventually kind of tailored my speech a little bit to be more along the lines of like, hi, I'm Chris. I have all these skills in these areas and I can do these things. And I'm wondering if you have some time that we could chat about it because I'm really interested in your company. And I think that not giving them the easy yes or no to get out of the conversation quickly was really helpful. And it got me a couple surprise interviews. Surprise meaning I didn't know I was going to get an interview until they called me and asked if I wanted to do an interview. And so I think that was one of the bigger things, was just kind of how I presented myself when I'm talking to these people. And I think it worked out really well. It got me a lot more conversations and it got me a lot more connections between people. So someone didn't have anything at their company, but they were able to pass me along to someone they knew. And I kind of walked through it that way.
I think we talked about that last time you were here, Chris. Networking and the people you know, even if they're not great friends or just acquaintances, so often those relationships pay off so much, especially, and your approach was just outstanding. So kudos to you for coming up with something that worked and being creative about the way that you approached it and realizing some of the challenges. It's not unlike times that a vendor contacts you on LinkedIn and says, hey, I have this great product. It's really easy to just say no and block them. But if you are creative about it and engaging and really put yourself out there, it'll pay dividends. So great job. Just keep up with the networking, even beyond finding the jobs. There's so many good opportunities, whether it be a job or joining part of a professional organization or group of colleagues, definitely invaluable.
Yeah, it's like an ever-changing business. It's interesting to see that you said it's all these impersonal interactions. After a generation of COVID, it seems like people are, instead of embracing the remote future, I guess they're kind of really liking that personal interaction yet. We're still going to start to see more and more of that as other scams of remote people online getting hired. So it's interesting to see that you have that same experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think that getting that initial kind of meeting and relationship is really important for both parties because then you can establish that trust after you've met and kind of chatted a little bit. And then it makes it easier to work remotely or work further apart. But definitely that initial contact makes you something more than just a box on their screen. It makes you more than just another resume in their inbox, especially if you can say something funny or memorable or or anything like
Yeah.
that. It definitely helps a lot.
That's great. And at the end of the day, too, I was thinking about this as I've interviewed people in the past. Your education, and you have a great education, but from even, any of us interviewing, education is only so much. People forget where you went to school. It's more about that personal interaction. If you're able to demonstrate that you can show and you can be confident, like you said, and really make an impression, a good impression on somebody, that's key.
I got a job offer one time, quite a while back, but the interview went off the rails because I saw a picture of a roller coaster on the interviewer's desk, and we got chatting about roller coasters, and we didn't talk anything shop. And I ended up getting an offer, and I turned it down because I didn't know anything about the company when I left. But yeah, I mean, building a connection with, and it's just not just in interviews. The relationship and building a connection applies to social engineering. It applies to so many things, professional behavior, friendships, all types of relationships, professional and otherwise. So yeah, that's really kind of fascinating the way that Nathaniel touched on it. With COVID, I think we went from one extreme to the other. We're always overcorrecting, it seems like, in society. We go, oh, well, this isn't working. We're going to go complete 180 degrees opposite direction, and then you course correct, you end up somewhere in the middle. But right now people are starved for that interpersonal connection, and that's a big thing that I think is going to pay off.
It's interesting too, like you mentioned, Andrew, that's a good point, the social engineering perspective. It's a great trait, the confidence in presenting yourself to, say, a recruiter or future boss. It's really a great trait to bring into the cybersecurity realm too, because a lot of really, as we're cybersecurity leaders and working in the cyberspace, a lot of it's just communicating effectively and making sure your message is clear, and that users, which we see as probably the weakest link, myself included, are informed about the cyber risks and threats out there. So it's always just always improving, watching helpful videos. There's so much content online about how to speak better, how to engage better, how to present yourself better. It's a constant learning.
Absolutely. And I'm a relatively confident person. I don't mind talking to anybody in particular. But online, I've typically always, like, since probably well before I got out of the Marine Corps, I've always kept my online presence really kind of low. And I was never out there online. It just wasn't something I was interested in. And so that doesn't really serve me well on LinkedIn, right? And so I had to, I learned from some other people, definitely, but I had to kind of increase my presence and put myself out there on LinkedIn as a way to back up what I'm saying in person, because everyone's going to check you, right? But that also, to your point, Nathaniel, is that I had to create content. I had to put things out there that people would actually read, or at least click on and glance over before they left. And so that actually kind of forced me to go learn something new so that I could learn it and then talk about what I learned. Kind of prevented me from just sitting exactly where I was and just trying to talk about the stuff I already knew. And I think I got a little bit more engagement out of that. And I think that it was really helpful just on a personal level of making sure I had my continuing education while I was looking for employment.
It's awesome. So one thing, Chris, that we mentioned right before we kicked off the recording, but you didn't specifically go into a cyber job, but it was something that fits your skills and could be a bridge to other opportunities. Let's talk a little bit about that. So I think it's a great approach, and I agree with the sentiments you shared, but let's talk a little bit about how you're going to move forward and what your goals are long term. Not that you want to jump ship to a different role or anything like that. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I am in a data analyst role, which is definitely not cybersecurity, but I am very interested in it. And through the hiring process, I was very adamant that cybersecurity was like my overall interest and my long-term goal. And I have definitely had experience that speaking up at work is the way to make things happen. It doesn't always happen right away, but over time, once you've planted that seed, then people they can recall it much easier the next time you bring it up. So I've told them that I want to study for some certificates and that I want to keep continuing to learn in the cybersecurity realm. And I am currently not, but I haven't decided which of the organizations I would like to join. I know there's different ones like ISC Squared and things like that in the San Diego area, but I do intend to add at least one of those to my kind of social calendar, just like I go to San Diego Ruby Club once a month. So my long-term goals are to work in a cybersecurity role. It would be cool if it was something exciting. Can't always guarantee that, and just to kind of continue to be a student, but to like have that life, I suppose.
Well, definitely as you progress through your role, think about it from the cybersecurity practitioner standpoint as well, and that will serve you when it comes time to potentially transition. So I think that a big part of it is knowing where you want to go. So many people are unsure of even a general direction that they want to take their career. So knowing that you already have an interest in cybersecurity, you have the opportunity now to leverage some resources and get some education. And if you're working government contracts, I can tell you for sure you're going to encounter a lot of things that on the surface may not necessarily seem cybersecurity related. But another thing Nathaniel and I have talked about with many or amongst ourselves is cybersecurity is really part of risk now. It's kind of migrating away from, especially the further up you go in terms of your career path and your role. You have to really start looking at things from a risk perspective. And when you start to approach it from that direction, especially in like government, then you start getting into, hey, do you have any special type of compliance or auditing that you can learn about, or any regulations, tactics for securing data, and even in the way that data analysis is performed and data classification and all of those things may not seem individually like they're a big part of cybersecurity, but they are fundamentally all parts of risk and play so closely along. It's sometimes surprising what doesn't on the surface. And the role that comes to mind for me a lot is auditors. They're not necessarily a cybersecurity role or a cybersecurity function, but they can be, and they can be very technical, stereotypically, or from a general perspective, people think of that as a very dull or unfulfilling job, but they're all different, and some of them are quite interesting. So yeah, that's it's a good approach. You find a place that you like, you learn what you can, you grow, evolve, and take the next opportunity to come.
And I think it's interesting, Chris, that you're in data analysis, because that's actually a lot of what a cybersecurity professional does, like with regard to analyzing log data. For example, Stephanie mentioned that was actually one of the jobs that a lot of people are looking for. Stephanie is the recruiter for cybersecurity. We interviewed one episode back, and yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential in just analyzing data and figuring out how to look at data from a different perspective and bringing that as an expertise into a role that could be a security analyst. I mean, that seems like a pretty natural fit if you're looking at data all day or whatever that role specifically is, but keeping that in the perspective. I think too, like Andrew mentioned, having that risk-based perspective is also data-driven. Where are we getting our numbers from? We're just making risks out of our hat, but we have to have a backup of where we can say, okay, we get this number of whatever in a cyber metric. We've got to be able to have numbers to prove what we're doing. We're just going to be we have no plan. We're just going to be creating projects that really don't protect the business. They may protect a pet project we have. The business doesn't really suffer from that cyber risk. So we have to be able to focus on the risks that business has, and using that data-driven approach, I think, is a great perspective I'm sure could bring.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Sounds great. I will think about it more that way. I was actually, funnily enough, thinking, I didn't put the two in my head together, but when I was walking back to my car from work today, that I was trying to figure out how I can keep people from screwing up the data that we're trying to work with and collect and things like that. And I mean, that in and of itself is a little bit of risk in cybersecurity, trying to keep your data clean and make sure that the integrity of your data set. So yeah, it does seem like, the more you talk about it, it does seem like a really great lead into cybersecurity.
Yeah, very much. Security culture can come in all different departments too. Like, yeah, it's not just like a cyber guy who sits and is talking to hackers or interacting with ransomware payments. That's hopefully never what we do. It's mostly just looking at a lot of data, making decisions based on that data points, and implementing tools, techniques, communication strategies to prevent risk. It's really all a cybersecurity person is, and really anybody is, if they're practicing good security principles on a day-to-day basis in every part of life, hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I just wanted to offer one more thing. As part of the continuing education thing, I came across an opportunity to take a networking class, which I figure could be awesome, even if I don't get into cybersecurity one day.
Yeah.
But it was, I think it looked really good for me, to the people that I'm working with, to know that I'm still interested and I'm actively pursuing this information, this knowledge. And everybody, once I told them that it was available and I had the opportunity to do it, they were super on board and allowed me to adjust my schedule and things like that. So I think that the continuing education part can be a really good way to show other people that you're working with that you are serious about what you're doing and you really mean it when you say you want to do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that kind of brings up another point, going back to how you got hired. Do you have any tips for people when doing interviews on remote, like a camera like this setting?
Oh, definitely all the typical ones of make sure your head's in the right spot and that you're wearing clothes, and that the lights are on. I think a lot of it is just remembering that you're basically talking face to face with someone and you need to respond to them in a way that they know that you're listening and you're not like looking at texts or whatever off in the corner of the screen.
I had somebody interview me one time, or not interview me, I was interviewing them, and not at the company I'm now in place. And they had like people moving around in the background, and like it was in the middle of a messy room, and it just didn't give me, and maybe it was totally fine, maybe that was the only place they had, but it was distracting. But go ahead.
I know I think that similar to what you were talking about earlier with the kind of remote work thing, it helps to be, I guess, a little bit over the top, I would say, with your emotions and how you portray yourself. Because when you're in person, you see all the minor facial changes and things like that and the body language. But when we're here talking, just us three, chest up, then I either have to raise my hands in front of the camera or I have to like really make an expression for you to know that I'm trying to make a joke. So being a little bit over the top, I found can be quite helpful. And it also puts the other person in a good mood to know that, you're having fun with them and enjoying the conversation.
On the camera and just like, it makes it a more engaging conversation. Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah, if you're able to do that, it definitely is going to give you an advantage because that is not a strong suit of, by and large, people in our age.
Yeah.
We're not the most excited, charismatic. And quite honestly, sometimes those people are a little bit off-putting people in the world because they're not like them, which is crazy. But yeah, if you can again engage, connect, find a way to build that relationship, definitely is going to go along. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. Again, Chris, congratulations. Very happy that things are going well for you and hopefully continued success. Hopefully check in again in the future, see how things are going. Matt, any big plans for the summer for both you guys?
I'm hopefully doing an international trip to Copenhagen, but the dates and details on that are still a little bit up in the air. But that's my big plan with the very few vacation days that I have earned so far.
Yeah, it's challenging at the start. What about you, Nathaniel? Anything big coming up? I know you've got your hands full with some things.
Yeah, I am going to be moving pretty soon here. So moving a little bit different place in Charlotte. And so we bought a house recently and just kind of moving in there and fixing it up the last few weeks. So it's kind of the next week or so for me. How about you, Andrew?
Lots of family and friends over the summer, but I think most of my big trips are going to hold off, going to recover. So looking forward to the summer and the weather and the lake and all of that.
Yeah, you were gone for a while. You want to talk more about that?
Oh, I went to so my nephew is at Chapel Hill as part of an exchange program and went to London, and so for spring break we popped over and hung out with him, and then drove up to Liverpool and Scotland and so on, came back. So just recovering from that still a little bit. Great trip, really cool.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out today and listening to this episode. And thanks, Chris, again. And stay cyber safe out there.